On November 5, 1605, Guy Fawkes attempted to blow up the Parliament. Unfortunately, when he sneaked inside, he was immediately captured. Later, he was killed in a public execution. In the near future, Great Britain is ruled by High Chancellor Adam. It's a fascist and totalitarian regime that controls its people through propaganda and fear. Anyone who doesn't follow his conservative rules is executed. One night, Evey leaves her house, ignoring curfew. When she sees a man down the street, she decides to take a different road, only to bump into another man. One more guy joins them and they surround her, listing the things they'll do to her. One of them grabs her hand, so she pulls it back and takes out her pepper spray. Unfortunately, the man shows her his badge, which means he's part of the police force known as Fingerman. When Evey tries to run, the man she saw before appears behind her and captures her. When they're about to hurt her, a man only known as V appears wearing a Guy Fawkes mask. Using a knife, he destroys the Fingerman's badge before punching him in the face. The other man pulls out a gun, but V quickly disarms him and cuts his belt to make him trip on his pants. The third guy also tries to attack and V easily blocks all his moves. When the man tries to punch him, he hurts his hand because the mask is very hard. After throwing him against the wall, V notices that the second man is trying to recover his gun, so he hits him to knock him out. Afterward, V assures a terrified Evey that he won't hurt her and proceeds to give a very philosophical speech before slashing a political poster. V thinks that meeting a woman called Evey can't be a coincidence, so he invites her to a special performance. Moments later, the duo is on a rooftop in the middle of the city. When V asks for the date, Evey replies November 4th, but V says it's not anymore. As the clock chimes midnight, V asks Evey to always remember the treason of the 5th of November. Suddenly, classical music plays on the street speakers, so curious people come out of their homes to check what's happening. As V moves his hands like an orchestra conductor, a building blows up in a huge explosion that shoots fireworks in the sky. A few hours later, the government is discussing what happened. They discovered that a recording device was found wired into their broadcast system and decide to ban the song V played. They'll have to invent a story to cover the incident. V appears on many security cameras, but because of his costume, there are no clues to identify him. They do have a picture of Evey, so they're investigating her. They've also analyzed the fireworks and the explosives, but they were all homemade, so they can't be traced. Meanwhile, Chief Inspector Eric and Detective Dominic burst into Evey's apartment and find her ID. When they put her name in the system, they discover that her parents were political activists. They were detained when she was 12 and Evey was sent to the Juvenile Reclamation Project for 5 years. At the TV station, Evey watches the reporters read the government's version of the event. They claim it was an emergency demolition. Later, several boxes arrive in the mail with Fawkes masks. At that moment, V enters the station. The guard threatens to shoot him, but V has lots of explosives on his chest. He goes to the main studio and blocks the door with a special device. While the alarm wails and the crew is told to evacuate, the cops rush into the building. Eric and Dominic see Evey and chase after her, but the evacuation has a crowd in every corridor and Evey quickly loses them by hiding in a room. Soon V appears on the emergency channel talking about the state of the country. He mentions censorship, surveillance, submission, and the overall lack of freedom, calling people out for supporting Adam just because they were afraid. V also explains that he blew up the building to remind this country of what it's forgotten. He reminds society of what Guy Fawkes did on the 5th of November and asks them to stand with him a year from now outside the gates of Parliament to change history. Using a blowtorch, the police break down the door, only to discover that V has filled the studio with fog. The cops carefully move in the shadows and open fire as soon as they see V. However, when they unmask him, they discover it's a crew member. It turns out V put masks on all the employees and left the explosives in the control booth. While Dominic tries to disable the bomb, the others evacuate the masked people. Suddenly, a masked guy bumps into another one, telling the police that it's V. The cops immediately unmask him only to discover a muzzled employee, and the other guy is the actual V. He throws a blade at an officer and starts fighting the others, slashing them with a second blade or even using their own guns against them. When an officer opens fire, V uses a body as a shield. In just a few minutes, he's killed them all. At the same time, Dominic successfully disables the bomb. Since things get quiet, Evey comes out but sees V in the corridor, so she hides again. When V tries to reach the elevator, he's blocked by Dominic and his gun. Evey decides to come out and uses her pepper spray on Dominic, who hits her and knocks her out. V takes the chance to hit Dominic in return, knocking him out as well. A few hours later, all the newscasts say that V was a terrorist spreading messages of hate. They even play security footage of him killing the cops to paint him in the worst light. At the police station, Eric and Dominic also watch the security footage and learn that V took Evey. They investigate her family, but her mother died in a hunger strike. Her father was killed by the military, and her brother died during the outbreak at St. Mary's School. Meanwhile, Evey wakes up in a strange room. She comes out and finds herself in an underground home filled with art and antiques. V startles her when he appears and explains he took all this stuff from the Ministry of Objectionable Materials. Evey starts feeling guilty about assaulting an officer, but V points out she did what she thought was right. When she says she wants to leave, he tells her she's a wanted woman now and they know where she lives. If they capture her, they'll torture her and kill her, so V's hideout is the only safe place for her. V says she can leave next year after the 5th of November, so Evey freaks out and rushes back to the bedroom. The next morning, Evey apologizes to V and thanks him for helping her. When she notices that his hands are completely burned, he immediately puts on gloves. Evey asks what happened, but V only says there was a fire before distracting her with breakfast. She tastes the food and is shocked to discover V has real butter, which he took from Adam's supply train. A few days later, television host Lewis is having a shower while watching his own show full of government propaganda. At that moment, V uses Evey's work ID on the lock and surprises Lewis in the bathroom. Lewis sees V's reflection on his TV and tries to run away, but he slips on the wet floor and falls. Then V reveals that Lewis used to be a fingerman who tortured prisoners in a detention facility, including V himself. Lewis realizes that V is the only prisoner who escaped from the fire. Moments later, Eric and Dominic find Lewis' dead body with a red flower on his chest and puke on the floor. They try checking the security cameras, but they were cut. The only clue they have is Evey's ID on the system. In the morning, the detectives are frustrated because V has left no hair or prints behind. However, they did find Lewis illegal substances. Eric investigates Lewis' past and discovers he was already rich before being on TV because he was a major stockholder in a pharmaceutical company. They also learn that he fought in many countries with the military before he was put in charge of a detention facility. Later, Evey and V watch the news and hear that Lewis died from heart failure. Evey can tell the host is lying and remembers that her ID is missing, so she immediately concludes that V did it. She freaks out when he confirms he did, so he points out that she didn't complain when he killed the guys that attacked her. Evey realizes that killing is sometimes needed for justice. In the afternoon, the detectives visit a major to ask him about the detention center because all the official records are empty. The major claims he doesn't remember anything weird about that place, but also asks Eric to keep in mind that back then, everyone did what they had to do. Meanwhile, Evey decides to tell V about her past. Her father was a writer who always shared wonderful stories, but after her brother's death at St. Mary's School, both her parents became political. They protested against the government's changes and little Evey used to help them. When Adam rose to power, there was a riot on the streets, and Evey thought she'd see her parents die. She asked them to leave the country, but they refused because that would mean the government would win. One night, the fingerman burst into her house. Evey hid under her bed and had to watch as her parents were taken away with black bags on their heads. Now Evey apologizes for not having done more to help fight for their country and asks V to let her know if she can help with anything. Sometime later, the detectives search for the detention center's tax records. The digital copies disappeared, but thankfully they find a physical one. There are hundreds of doctors listed and the highest paid person was a priest. They search for his current location and discover he's a bishop now. At the same time, V asks Evey for help. At a church, Bishop Lilyman is waiting for the underage naughty worker he sees every week. However, his assistant warns him that they've sent someone older. When Lilyman goes to his room, he finds Evey wearing a childish costume and loves the sight. Evey stops Lilyman's advances and explains that V is coming to kill him. She's telling him this because she hopes he can help her in return, saying she's been V's prisoner for weeks. However, Lilyman thinks it's part of a game and throws Evey on the bed to try to get naughty with her. Evey kicks him to get him off her right before V kicks the door open. Lilyman exclaims that Evey wasn't lying and V realizes he was betrayed. Evey apologizes before running away. Lilyman rushes to get the gun he hides in a book and opens fire, but V quickly disarms him. As Lilyman starts begging, the security guys hear him and think it's part of his dirty game. They only realize there's danger when Lilyman says he doesn't want to die. Moments later, the detectives find Lilyman dead on the floor with puke near his face and a red flower on his chest. However, the case is taken from their hands by the head of the secret police Creedy because several important people have been murdered. Creedy explains that Adam believes there's a traitor passing information to the terrorists, and Eric is now one of the suspects. In the evening, Evey makes it to the house of her friend Gordon, who agrees to hide her and lend her some clothes. Evey is very nervous about getting Gordon in trouble, so he decides to show her his secret room. He has lots of band art and anti-government material, like painting of Adam dressed as the Queen. There also are naughty pictures of men. Gordon explains he doesn't like women and he only pretends he does to avoid getting executed. The next day, Eric learns the autopsy results from Coroner Delia. Lilyman died from the same poison that Lewis did, which can be found in any house in London. The flower is identified as a scarlet carson, which is believed to be extinct. When Eric returns to the office, Dominic explains he's finished checking the staff list from the detention center and discovered that V has killed them all except for one doctor. After the center was shut down, the last doctor disappeared for 2 years and then tried to apply for an overseas visa, but she was denied. All her records stopped after that, so she must have changed her name. At home, Delia searches for a hidden journal in her closet before going to bed. However, she's startled awake by V appearing in her room. She knows why he's there and she's grateful. All these years she's felt guilty and explains she didn't know what the center would do to the prisoners, which she's written about in her journal. V gives her the flower and reveals he's already poisoned her. She apologizes for everything before dying. At the same time, the detectives learn that the remaining doctor from the detention center is Delia. She won't answer her phone, so they rush to her house, but she's already dead. Eric finds her journal, and after reading it, he decides to show it to Adam, who tells him that this is a matter of national security. He also claims that everything in the journal is a lie, so anyone discussing its contents will be considered a traitor. However, Eric can't stop thinking about what he read. Hundreds of people were taken to the detention center just so Delia could experiment on them. Lewis and Lilyman often visited to keep an eye on things. Every day the prisoners grew weaker because of the experiment, and eventually they started to die. The bodies were thrown in a pit to be buried like trash. The only survivor had been V, who developed advanced reflexes but also got amnesia. He got that name because he was in cell 5. On November 5th, a series of explosions blew up the facility. Delia saw V among the flames and could tell the fury on his expression even though he had no eyes. At the station, Eric is researching the virus that killed over 100,000 people and caused many riots. When Dominic arrives, Eric turns on a debugging device and wonders if this biological attack wasn't caused by religious extremists. Dominic points out that those people confessed to the crime, but Eric thinks the government is behind it. In the evening, Gordon surprises Evey with a special episode of his show. They threw away the censor's approved script and instead recorded a humorous skit that mocks Adam. There's also a fake V, who also pretends to be Adam when unmasked. It ends with both Adams being killed. The real Adam hates it while the whole country loves it. In the middle of the night, Evey wakes up when she hears someone break in. Gordon rushes to her room to tell her to hide. Under the bed, Evey watches Creedy and the Fingerman beat Gordon up before taking him away. Once they're gone, Evey climbs through the window and tries to go down carefully, but she ends up falling. When she reaches the back door, someone captures her with a black bag. Moments later, the bag is removed and Evey finds herself in an interrogation room. She's being charged with V's crimes and will be executed unless she tells them where to find V since she doesn't have information to give them. She's processed. Evey's hair is shaved and her body hosed before they throw her in a dark cell. When she's given some food, a rat comes out to eat it. A long time passes before Evey hears a strange noise in the rat's hole. She reaches inside and finds a letter from a woman named Valerie, who was executed. She wanted someone to know her story, so she wrote it on toilet paper. Valerie grew up on a farm and went to an all-girls school, where she met her first girlfriend. Unfortunately, that girl stopped liking women after a while. As a teenager, she met a new girl, who inspired her to be brave enough to tell her parents about her orientation. Sadly, her parents were furious and kicked her out. Eventually, Valerie became an actress and met the love of her life, Ruth. They moved in together and Ruth grew Scarlet Carsons for her. When the regime took over the country, people of different orientations were executed and Ruth was captured at the market. Valerie was found in her house and sent to a cell. Her letter ends by telling whoever is reading that she loves them. Evey is occasionally taken out of the cell to be tortured for information, but she swears she doesn't know anything. She keeps herself sane by reading Valerie's story. When she finishes reading, she cries and kisses the paper. The next time they interrogate her, Evey doesn't say she doesn't know. She says she won't cooperate. When it's time for her execution, Evey announces she'd rather meet the end than confess anything. Shockingly, her captor tells her she's now free and leaves. A very wary Evey walks out of her cell and notices that the guard is a doll. When Evey opens the door at the end of the corridor, she discovers that she's been in V's hideout all along. He interrogated her and tortured her until he was sure he could trust her again. Unfortunately, he couldn't save Gordon, who has already been executed. Evey freaks out and calls V evil, saying that she hates him. V likes this because she wants her to embrace that hate and use it for good. Suddenly, Evey has an asthma attack, so V guides her through it while reminding her of what happened to her family. In the cell, she faced death, yet she stayed calm because she found something more important than her own life. Evey feels dizzy, so V takes her to the roof for fresh air. She cries under the rain and V sees a parallel to his own escape. Sometime later, Evey announces she's leaving and returns Valerie's letter to V. He decides to show her a secret room where he has hundreds of red flowers and Valerie's movie posters. It turns out Valerie was in the cell next to his in the detention center, and that's how he got the letter. Evey realizes that V is seeking revenge for what the government did to him and to Valerie. She thanks him for everything and agrees to meet him one more time before the 5th comes. After Evey leaves, V throws his mask at a mirror and cries. When the date approaches, Adam orders his men to send even more propaganda to stop people from joining V on the 5th. Soon every channel on TV is talking about the civil war in the USA and a fake new virus that V is blamed for. They even link this to the St. Mary's outbreak. At the police station, Dominic shows Eric that the day after the school outbreak, 3 of Creedy's men died in strange circumstances. Eric realizes one of those names sounds familiar and checks his email to discover that he's been contacted with an offer to learn the truth. Later at a museum, the detectives meet Rookwood, who shares the full story. Adam was always an aggressive conservative who was slowly rising in power by disregarding the political process and making his followers aggressive too. Eventually, his party launched a special project for the sake of national security, which was believed to research biological weapons. However, the true goal of this project was to get power. The project ended when V blew up the facility, but the scientists still had a sample of his blood and created a virus with it. Then Creedy chose 3 targets for the virus: St. Mary's School, a subway station, and a water treatment plant. Thousands of people were dying and people were so unhappy with the government that they voted for Adam. Once he was in power, he sold the medicine he had hidden all along, so he and his buddies became insanely rich. A year later, they captured 3 random rebels and executed them for creating the virus. After the story is over, Eric wants to take Rookwood into protective custody. However, Rookwood refuses to go out because of Creedy. He'll only cooperate if Eric puts Creedy under 24-hour surveillance. At home, Creedy is taking care of his plants when suddenly V surprises him with a knife to the neck. V plays some music so the security guards won't hear him and offers a deal. He'll surrender if Creedy gives him Adam. A few days later, Eric receives a call informing him that Rookwood is dead. In fact, he's been dead for years, which means V pretended to be in. Soon every person in the country receives a box in the mail with a full V costume. People wear it for fun or even to commit crimes. So when Adam asks the cops to arrest every masked person, it's impossible. Adam blames Creedy for everything. So Creedy decides to take V's deal. As Eric realizes V did this to create chaos, a fingerman shoots a little girl for wearing the mask. The locals immediately surround him and beat him up. These people are arrested, which becomes the last straw. Riots and violence quickly take over the streets, forcing the government to send out the military, which makes it all worse. On November 4th, Evey visits V and they share a dance. Evey tries to unmask him, but V stops her and says he must show her something. They follow the tunnels to an abandoned subway station and V reveals he has lots of explosives on a train. However, he leaves his home and the train to Evey, saying she had been right about him being evil. He thinks the explosives must be the people's choice to make and he must meet his maker. When he tries to leave, Evey kisses the mask and tries to convince him to stay, but he leaves anyway. That night, a video of Adam is played on TV to warn the population about a great danger, but all the buildings are empty. Creedy and his men meet with V and bring him Adam, who has been tied and beaten up. V puts a flower in Adam's jacket before Creedy shoots him in the head. Afterward, Creedy asks V to unmask, but he refuses. When 2 men try to grab the mask, he quickly kills them with his blades. Creedy and his men open fire, hitting V with several bullets. However, he isn't dead and he starts attacking everyone to kill them one by one while they're trying to reload. All the officers go down and Creedy opens fire again. V explains to him that he isn't human, he's an idea, and ideas are bulletproof. He finishes by breaking Creedy's neck to kill him. Then V takes off the armor he hid under his cape and returns to the subway station. He tells Evey that he loves her before dying in her arms, and she has a breakdown. Around the parliament, soldiers are in position to protect the building. Thousands of civilians appear wearing V's costume and they don't know what to do because none of their superiors are answering. They have no choice but to put down their weapons and let the crowd walk over them. At the same time, Evey puts V's body in the train and covers him with flowers. At that moment, Eric shows up and tries to stop her. Evey says that V was right and the country needs hope, so Eric puts his gun down. When the clocks strike midnight, Evey activates the train before taking Eric to the roof to watch the show. V's favorite song plays on the street speakers as the train explodes under the parliament, causing the building to blow up in colorful fireworks. The crowd unmasks while Evey says that V was all of us. So friends, I hope you liked this video. If you liked the video, then like, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video. Till then, bye.